The sound of forks scraping against plates filled the heavy silence of our family dinner. 2 weeks after Luke's funeral, and already I could feel the vultures circling. I caught Thea's sideways glance as she leaned closer to Jameson, whispering something that made him nod with practiced sympathy. My name is Genesis, and I never thought I'd be sitting at my own dining table feeling like an outsider. Luke and I hosted these family dinners for 30 years, but tonight everything felt different. The familiar scent of my pot roast couldn't mask the stench of ulterior motives. Genesis, dear, Thea's voice cut through my thoughts, saccharine sweet. Have you given any thought to what we discussed last week? About downsizing? I set down my fork, meeting her gaze. No, Thea, this is my home. We're just concerned. Jameson chimed in, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. Living alone in such a big house at your age? I'm 55, not 85, I replied, forcing a smile. And I'm not alone. Athena helps me maintain the place. Athena, my caretaker, looked up from her plate, offering a supportive smile. She was young, but her presence had become a comfort since Luke's passing. About that, Thea continued, sharing another meaningful look with Jameson. We've been thinking it might be more practical to consider one of those lovely retirement communities. The one near us has excellent facilities. My stepson Ira shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His girlfriend Olive squeezed his hand under the table, a gesture I wasn't meant to see. Luke wanted me to stay here, I said firmly. This was our dream home. Luke would want what's best for you, Thea pressed, her voice dripping with false concern. And managing such a large property alone, it's not practical. I'm managing just fine, I insisted, standing to clear the plates. Athena moved to help, but I waved her off. I needed a moment alone in the kitchen. As I loaded the dishwasher, voices drifted in from the dining room. I moved closer to the door, my heart pounding as I caught fragments of their conversation. Needs to be handled delicately, Thea was saying. We can't just— The sooner the better, Jameson replied in a low voice, before she gets too settled in the idea of staying. Dad wouldn't have wanted this, Ira's voice, barely above a whisper. Your father wasn't thinking clearly near the end, Thea snapped. We're doing what's best for everyone. I gripped the counter, my knuckles turning white. Luke had been perfectly clear-minded when he made me promise to keep our home, to never let anyone pressure me into leaving. This is your sanctuary, he'd said, holding my hand during those final days. Don't let anyone take it from you. Bethany, my best friend, had warned me about this. Watch your back, she'd said at the funeral. Family can turn faster than milk in summer heat. I returned to the dining room with coffee and the apple pie Luke always loved. Conversation stopped abruptly, replaced by overly bright smiles. Genesis, Kayla, my niece, spoke up for the first time that evening. Would you like me to come by tomorrow? Help you sort through some of Uncle Luke's things? Before I could answer, Thea interrupted. Oh, we can help with that. No need to trouble yourself, Kayla. I'd love your help, Kayla, I said pointedly. Come by around 10? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meaningful glances and veiled suggestions. As everyone prepared to leave, Thea hung back, placing a hand on my arm. We're family, Genesis. We only want what's best for you. I looked into her eyes, seeing the calculation behind the concern. I know exactly what you want, Thea. She stiffened slightly before recovering her smile. Get some rest, dear. We'll talk more soon. After they left, I sat in Luke's favorite armchair, running my fingers over the worn fabric. The house felt different now, filled with shadows of whispered conspiracies and hidden agendas. Athena appeared with a cup of tea. Ms. Genesis, are you all right? They're planning something, Athena. They want my home. She hesitated before speaking. I've noticed things. Papers on Mr. Jameson's desk when I served him coffee last week. Something about property values. I took the tea, my hand steady despite the anger building inside me. Luke knew this might happen. That's why he made sure everything was in my name. But looking at the family photos on the wall, I wondered if his siblings knew that. And more importantly, I wondered what they were willing to do to get what they wanted. They think I'm just a grieving widow they can push around, I murmured, more to myself than Athena. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The morning after that tense dinner, I was sorting through Luke's old files when Kayla arrived. Her presence brought a warmth to the house that had been missing since the funeral. "Found anything interesting?" she asked, settling beside me on the floor of Luke's study. "Just memories," I said, holding up an old photograph of Luke and me at our wedding. "And some concerning documents." "What kind of documents?" I pulled out a folder I'd discovered earlier. "Medical evaluations. Recent ones. But I never had these tests done." Kayla's eyes widened as she scanned the papers. "These are dated last month. It says you're showing signs of cognitive decline?" "Exactly. And look who ordered them." I pointed to the referring physician's name. "Dr. Harrison? Isn't that Aunt Thea's golf buddy?" Before I could respond, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Athena appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Genesis? Mr. Jameson is here. He says he needs to discuss some urgent family business." I quickly slid the folder under some others. "Send him in." Jameson entered, his usual confident stride betraying a hint of nervousness. "Genesis, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Just catching up with Kayla," I said, gesturing to the scattered papers. "Going through Luke's things." His eyes darted around the study. "Actually, that's partly why I'm here. There are some documents we need to locate. Insurance papers, property deeds, that sort of thing." "Everything's in order," I assured him. Luke was very thorough. "Yes, well," he cleared his throat. "Thea and I would feel better if we could review them. Make sure everything's properly arranged." Kayla stood up, crossing her arms. "Why wouldn't it be properly arranged, Uncle Jameson?" He shot her a sharp look. "Family looking out for family, that's all. Genesis has been through so much." "I appreciate the concern," I said, standing as well. "But I'm handling it." Just then, Athena appeared again. "Ms. Genesis, there's someone at the door. Says they're here about the property assessment." Jameson's face reddened. "I'll handle that," he said quickly, heading for the door. "No," I called after him. "I'll handle it. This is my house, after all." In the foyer, a woman in a business suit was waiting. "Mrs. Stout? I'm Rachel from Cornerstone Realty. I'm here about the property evaluation requested by my sister-in-law," I finished, watching Jameson squirm. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This house isn't for sale." "Oh." She looked confused, checking her tablet. "I have paperwork here indicating—" "Whatever you have is unauthorized," I said firmly. "I own this property, and I haven't requested any evaluations." After the realtor left, Jameson tried to explain. "We just wanted to know the current market value, for tax purposes." "Get out," I said quietly, "and tell Thea to stop whatever game she's playing." Once he was gone, Kayla hugged me. "You know what they're trying to do, right?" "They think the house is still in Luke's name," I said. "They don't know he transferred everything to me before he died." "Ms. Genesis?" Athena's voice was hesitant. "There's something you should know. Last week, while cleaning Mr. Jameson's study during the family lunch, I found some papers. One was labeled Petition for Guardianship." My blood ran cold. "They're trying to declare me incompetent." "I took pictures with my phone," Athena admitted. "I knew something wasn't right." Kayla grabbed my hand. "We need to call Bethany. She's a lawyer. She'll know what to do." I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. The medical evaluations, the property assessment, the guardianship petition. They were building a case to take everything from me. "There's more," Athena said. "I overheard Ms. Thea on the phone yesterday. She mentioned something about an emergency family meeting next week. Said it was time to handle the situation." I walked to Luke's desk and opened the bottom drawer, pulling out a sealed envelope he'd given me months ago. "Time to handle it indeed." "What's that?" Kayla asked. "Insurance," I replied, breaking the seal. "Luke knew his siblings better than they thought. He left me everything I need to fight back." Inside were documents, photos, and a USB drive. Evidence of past schemes, failed business dealings, and family secrets Thea and Jameson would rather keep buried. "They want to play dirty?" I said, spreading the contents on the desk. Let's show them how it's done. Kayla and Athena exchanged looks, and I saw something new in their eyes. Not pity for the grieving widow, but respect for a woman ready to fight back. First, I said, reaching for my phone, let's call Bethany. Then we're going to plan our own little family meeting. Bethany's office smelled of coffee and determination. She spread the documents across her desk, her lawyer's eyes scanning every detail while I sat across from her, gripping my cup of coffee so tight I thought it might shatter. "This is serious, Genesis," she said, holding up the guardianship petition. "They're not just trying to take your house. They're trying to take your autonomy." "Can they do it?" Kayla asked from the chair beside me. Bethany shook her head. "Not with what Luke left you. But we need to be smart about this. They're building a paper trail to make you look incompetent." "Show her the USB drive," Kayla urged. I pulled out the small device Luke had left behind. Bethany plugged it into her computer, and her eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. "Well, well," she murmured. "Looks like Thea and Jameson have been busy. Failed real estate schemes, questionable investments, tax discrepancies. Luke kept everything," I explained. "He said it might come in handy someday." A knock at the door made us all jump. Bethany's assistant poked her head in. "Ms. Genesis, your stepson Ira is here. Says it's urgent." I exchanged looks with Kayla before nodding. "Send him in." Ira entered, looking uncomfortable in his business suit. His girlfriend Olive followed, her hand protectively on his arm. "Genesis, we need to talk," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Aunt Thea called a family meeting for tomorrow night. They're going to try to force me into assisted living," I finished. "Declare me incompetent?" He blinked. "How did you—" "Your father warned me this might happen," I said softly. "He knew his siblings better than they knew themselves." Olive stepped forward. "Ira's been struggling with this. He knows what they're doing is wrong." "They said it was for your own good," Ira blurted out. "That you're not coping well, that the house is too much." "But I've seen the documents they're using. The medical evaluations are fake." Bethany leaned forward. "Would you be willing to testify to that?" Ira looked at Olive, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes. Dad would never forgive me if I let them do this to you." My phone buzzed. A text from Athena. "Ms. Thea just showed up at the house with some men. They're going through papers in the study." "They're searching my house." I stood up, anger replacing fear. "Like common thieves?" "They're looking for the deed," Ira explained. "They don't know Dad transferred everything to you." "Genesis." Bethany's voice was sharp. "Don't confront them, not yet. Let them think they're winning." "The family meeting tomorrow," Kayla said suddenly. "That's when they're planning to spring everything on you. The medical reports, the guardianship petition." "Then that's when we'll spring our trap," I replied. "Bethany, can you have everything ready by then?" She nodded, already reaching for her phone. "I'll have the injunction prepared, along with documentation of their fraudulent activities. But Genesis, are you sure you want to go nuclear? They're still family. Family doesn't try to steal your home and freedom," I said firmly. "Luke protected me from them one last time by leaving me these documents. I'm going to use them." Ira shifted uncomfortably. "Aunt Thea's been calling all the relatives, telling them you're not mentally stable. Some believer." "Let them," I said. "Tomorrow night, everyone will know the truth." We spent the next hour planning. Bethany prepared legal documents, while Kayla coordinated with Athena to document everything happening at the house. Ira provided details about Thea and Jameson's plans, his loyalty to his father's wishes finally outweighing family pressure. As we were leaving, Olive pulled me aside. "Genesis, there's something else you should know. Thea's been promising pieces of your house to different family members. The antique furniture to Cousin Sarah, the art collection to Uncle Robert. Dividing up my possessions before they've even taken them," I said bitterly. "How thoughtful of her." Back at home, I found Athena waiting anxiously. The study was a mess, drawers left open, papers scattered. "They left when they couldn't find what they were looking for," she reported. "Ms. Thea seemed angry." I picked up a framed photo of Luke that they'd knocked over. Tomorrow night, they'll be more than angry. They'll be exposed. Ms. Genesis? Athena hesitated. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I'm on your side. What they're doing, it's not right. I squeezed her hand, grateful for another ally in this fight. As night fell, I sat in Luke's chair, looking at the home we'd built together. Tomorrow, his siblings would try to take it all away. But Luke had given me everything I needed to fight back. They think I'm a helpless widow, I whispered to his photo. Time to show them how wrong they are. The day before the family meeting, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Thea's real estate office was quiet when I walked in, claiming I needed to discuss a property listing. The receptionist, recognizing me as family, waved me straight through. Genesis! Thea's surprise was poorly masked by her fake smile. What brings you here? Just wanted to talk, I said, settling into a chair across from her desk. About the house. Her eyes lit up like a shark spotting blood in the water. Oh, have you been considering our suggestions? Actually, I've been thinking about what Luke would want. I watched her carefully. He always said family should stick together. Exactly! Thea leaned forward eagerly. That's what we've been saying, and the retirement community near us. A knock interrupted her. Jameson burst in, freezing when he saw me. Genesis, I didn't expect. Join us, I said pleasantly. We're discussing family matters. He shared a look with Thea before sitting down. I noticed him trying to subtly close his laptop, but not before I glimpsed an email with my name in the subject line. I found some interesting papers in Luke's study, I mentioned casually. Medical evaluations I don't remember having. Memory issues are exactly what we're concerned about, Thea said smoothly. These things can creep up slowly. Funny thing about memories, I replied. I clearly remember Dr. Harrison playing golf with you last month, Thea. The same doctor who supposedly evaluated me. The siblings exchanged another glance. Jameson cleared his throat. Genesis, we're only trying to help. Like you helped Luke with the Riverside Development Project? They both stiffened. That project had been their biggest failure and their darkest secret. I don't know what you're talking about, Thea said sharply. My phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. Found more documents in Jameson's car, photos attached. I should go. I stood up. But I'll see you both tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to our family discussion. Genesis, Thea called as I reached the door. Be careful. Sometimes people who dig too deep get buried in what they find. I turned back, meeting her gaze. Is that a threat, Thea? A friendly warning. From family. Outside, I called Bethany immediately. They're getting nervous. Thea just threatened me. Perfect, Bethany replied. Did you plant the bug? I smiled, remembering the tiny recording device I'd dropped behind Thea's desk. It's done. Let's see what they say when they think I'm gone. Back home, Athena was waiting with news. Ms. Genesis, while you were out, Mr. Jameson's assistant came by. She was supposed to deliver some papers, but she gave them to me by mistake. She handed me a thick envelope. Inside were more fraudulent medical reports and a draft of the guardianship petition, complete with forged signatures from family members. They're getting sloppy, I muttered, making mistakes. My phone rang. It was Ira. Genesis, you need to hear this. I just overheard Aunt Thea on the phone with her lawyer. They're planning to have you committed if you resist tomorrow night. Committed? My hand tightened on the phone. They can't do that. They've got a doctor on standby. They're saying it's for a psychiatric evaluation, but really, it's to get me out of the way while they take everything, I finished. Thank you, Ira. Are you still with us for tomorrow? All the way, he promised. Olive and I both. Later that evening, Kayla came over with the recording from the bug. We sat in the kitchen, listening to Thea and Jameson's conversation after I'd left. She knows something, Thea's voice crackled through the speaker. About Riverside. Impossible, Jameson replied. Those records were destroyed. Luke must have kept copies. We need to move faster. Once we get control of the house. And Genesis? The doctor will handle that. A few weeks in observation, and no judge will question the guardianship petition. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking with anger. They were going to have me locked up. Not anymore, Kayla said firmly. We've got them, Genesis. All of it. The fake medical reports, the forged signatures, the Riverside evidence. Tomorrow night, it all comes out. Athena brought us tea, her young face serious. Ms. Genesis, whatever happens tomorrow, you're not alone. I looked around my kitchen, at Kayla's determined expression, at Athena's loyal support, at the house Luke and I had filled with love for 30 years. Tomorrow, his siblings would try to take it all away. But they'd forgotten something crucial. A woman protecting her home is more dangerous than any predator. No, I agreed, I'm not alone. And after tomorrow night, Thea and Jameson will wish they'd remembered that. The morning of the family meeting, Athena rushed into my bedroom, her face pale. Ms. Genesis, you need to see this. She handed me her phone, showing a group text from Thea to the extended family. Deeply concerned about Genesis's mental state. She's becoming paranoid, making accusations. Please come early to discuss intervention options. They're trying to stack the deck, I said, getting dressed quickly. How many responses? Most of the family is arriving 2 hours early. Only Kayla, Ira, and Olive declined. My phone rang. It was Bethany. Genesis, we have a problem. Thea's filed an emergency petition for temporary guardianship. They're trying to fast-track it before tonight's meeting. Can they do that? Not if we move first. I'm heading to the courthouse now. Don't let anyone in the house until I call back. Barely an hour later, someone knocked on my front door. Through the security camera, I saw Thea standing there with a man in a suit. Genesis? She called out. This is Dr. Peters. We're worried about you, dear. Please let us in. I pressed the intercom. Not without my lawyer present. See? Thea's voice dripped with concern. This paranoid behavior is exactly what we're worried about. Doctor, please note her refusal to cooperate. I'm noting your harassment, I replied, and the security cameras are noting it too. They left after 15 minutes of trying, but I knew they'd be back. I called Kayla. They're at the courthouse, she reported. Bethany's handling it. How are you holding up? I'm fine, but I stopped as Athena rushed in again. Ms. Genesis, Ms. Thea's assistant just called. She wants to help us. Put her on speaker, I told Athena, with Kayla still listening on my phone. Hello? A nervous voice came through. I'm Sandra, Ms. Thea's assistant. I've been gathering evidence for months. The forged documents, the fake medical reports. I have copies of everything. Why help us now? I asked. Because they're planning to blame me if things go wrong. I heard them this morning. I'm supposed to be their scapegoat. Sandra, I said carefully, would you be willing to testify to this? Yes. I'm tired of their schemes. I'll bring everything to your house now. An hour later, Sandra arrived with a thick folder. The evidence was damning. Emails discussing the fake medical reports, drafts of the forged documents, even recordings of Thea and Jameson planning the whole thing. My phone rang again. Bethany this time. We won at the courthouse. The judge threw out their emergency petition and issued a restraining order. They can't come within 100 feet of you until after a formal hearing. Perfect timing, I said. We just got a treasure trove of evidence from Thea's assistant. Even better, I'm on my way over. We need to prepare for tonight. The afternoon passed in a flurry of activity. Bethany and Kayla helped me organize the evidence, while Athena and Sandra prepared the dining room for the meeting. Ira and Olive arrived early, bringing more allies, cousins who'd refused to believe Thea's lies. Aunt Thea's furious about the restraining order, Ira reported. She's telling everyone it proves you're using legal tricks to hide your mental state. Let her dig her hole deeper, Bethany said, sorting papers. Every accusation she makes will look worse when the truth comes out. At 6 o'clock, my security system alerted me to cars pulling up. Through the cameras, I watched family members arriving in groups, their faces concerned and confused. Thea and Jameson stood at the legal distance, directing people toward the house. Ready? Kayla squeezed my hand. I looked around at my support team. Bethany with her legal documents, Athena and Sandra with their evidence, Ira and Olive with their loyalty, and Kayla with her unwavering support. More than ready, I replied. Let's show them what happens when you try to steal a widow's home. The doorbell rang. Through the camera, I saw Uncle Robert, Aunt Marie, and various cousins huddled on my porch, looking uncertain. Ms. Genesis? Athena's voice was strong and clear. It's time. I straightened my shoulders and headed for the door. Behind me, Bethany arranged the evidence on the dining room table. Through the window, I could see Thea and Jameson watching from their legally mandated distance, probably thinking they had the upper hand. They have no idea what's coming, Kayla whispered. No, I agreed, reaching for the door handle. But they're about to find out. I opened the door to face my family, ready to expose the truth and fight for everything Luke and I had built together. The real show was about to begin, and I had front-row seats to my in-laws' downfall. The family filed into my dining room, their whispers echoing off the walls. Uncle Robert immediately took charge, his voice carrying that same condescending tone Thea had perfected. Genesis, we're here because we're concerned, he began, standing at the head of my table like he owned it. Thea and Jameson have shared some disturbing information. About my mental state? I interrupted, remaining seated. Or about my supposed inability to manage my own home. Now, dear, Aunt Marie chimed in, there's no need to be defensive. We're here to help. Bethany cleared her throat. As Genesis's attorney, I should inform everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Attorney? Uncle Robert's eyebrows shot up. This is a family matter? It became a legal matter, I said, when Thea and Jameson tried to file an emergency guardianship petition this morning. Murmurs rippled through the room. Cousin Sarah spoke up. They said you were becoming unstable, making wild accusations. Like these? I nodded to Athena, who started distributing copies of the forged medical reports. Or perhaps you'd like to see these? Sandra began passing out emails showing Thea and Jameson's plans. What is this? Uncle Robert demanded, scanning the documents. Evidence, Bethany stated flatly, of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted elder abuse. The room erupted in confused chatter. Through the window, I could see Thea and Jameson pacing at their court-mandated distance. That's not possible, Aunt Marie protested. Thea showed us evaluations from Dr. Harrison. Who happens to be her golf partner? Kayla cut in. And who, when contacted by our investigator, confirmed he never examined Genesis. Ira stood up. It's true. I've seen them fabricating these documents. They planned to have Genesis committed so they could seize control of the house. The house that, by the way, Bethany added, is legally mine. I pulled out Luke's final property deed. Transferred to me 6 months before his death, with all the proper documentation. Uncle Robert grabbed the deed, his face reddening. This can't be right. Luke would never… Luke knew exactly what his siblings were capable of, I said quietly. Just like he knew about the Riverside development scandal. The room went deadly silent. Even Uncle Robert paled. How did you… he started. Luke kept records, I continued, of everything. The investors they defrauded, the environmental regulations they violated, the money they embezzled. Sandra stepped forward, her voice shaking. I have copies of all the transactions. They plan to use the profits from selling this house to pay back their debts. Cousin Sarah stood up abruptly. Is this true? They promised me the antique furniture if I supported the guardianship petition. They promised me the art collection, another cousin admitted. They were dividing up my home before they even had it, I said, using all of you as pawns in their game. Bethany laid out more documents. We have evidence of at least 6 different attempts to forge Genesis's signature, 3 fabricated medical evaluations, and dozens of emails discussing their plans to have her forcibly committed. The family's shock turned to anger. Not at me, but at Thea and Jameson. Through the window, I could see them realizing something was wrong, as relatives began shooting them furious looks. There's more, Ira added. They've been using family investments to cover their debts for years. Check your accounts, especially the trust funds they manage. Phones came out immediately, the room filled with gasps and cursing as people discovered the truth. I trusted them with my children's college fund, Aunt Marie whispered. Uncle Robert was already dialing his bank. Others were texting Thea and Jameson, demanding explanations. Genesis? Cousin Sarah approached me, tears in her eyes. We had no idea. They told us you were sick, that you needed help. They counted on family loyalty to blind you, I said gently. Just like they counted on me being too grief-stricken to fight back. Bethany stood up. I've prepared criminal complaints and civil suits. Anyone who's lost money to their schemes can join the legal action. A line formed at Bethany's end of the table as relatives rushed to add their names to the complaints. Through the window, I watched Thea and Jameson finally realize their game was up. They hurried to their car as family members began storming out to confront them. Should we stop them? Kayla asked, watching them speed away. No need, Bethany smiled. The police are waiting at their homes with search warrants. This isn't just about saving your house anymore, Genesis. This is about justice for everyone they've hurt. I looked around my dining room, at the family members hugging and apologizing, at my team of supporters standing proud, at the home Luke had protected for me one last time. Justice, I agreed, and truth. It's all I ever wanted. The next morning's headlines screamed, "Local real estate moguls arrested in fraud scheme." My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn, with calls from family members and reporters. Turn on the news! Kayla burst through my front door, still in her pajamas. They're doing the perp walk! Sure enough, there were Thea and Jameson, being led out of their homes in handcuffs. Their perfectly manicured appearances had crumbled, Thea's hair disheveled, Jameson's expensive suit wrinkled. Genesis! Bethany's voice came through my speakerphone. The DA wants to meet with you today. They've found evidence of even more crimes during the searches. How much money did they steal? I asked. Initial estimates are over $2 million from family members alone. The Riverside development fraud could triple that number. Athena brought in coffee as we watched the coverage. The reporter was interviewing Uncle Robert outside the police station. We trusted them, he said on screen, his face red with anger. They nearly convinced us to help them destroy an innocent woman's life to cover their crimes. The doorbell rang. Ira and Olive stood there with Sandra, all looking exhausted but relieved. The police interviewed me all night, Sandra said, collapsing onto my couch. I gave them everything, every email, every forged document, every recording. You were brave to come forward, I told her. I should have done it sooner. The things they were planning, she shuddered. They wanted to have you committed for months while they liquidated everything you own. My phone rang again. Aunt Marie this time. Genesis, I'm so sorry. We should have seen through their lies. They took advantage of our grief over Luke. They took advantage of everyone, I assured her. But it's over now. The morning passed in a blur of police statements and family visits. Around noon, Bethany arrived with more news. The DA is offering them a deal, she announced, but they have to make full restitution to everyone they defrauded. They'll have to sell everything, Ira said. Their houses, cars, investments. Good, Kayla declared. Let them know how it feels to lose their homes. The television showed Thea and Jameson's booking photos, while a reporter detailed their schemes. Sources say the siblings targeted their own family members, using their positions of trust to embezzle millions. Their sister-in-law's resistance to their final scheme led to their downfall. Ms. Genesis? Athena called from the kitchen. More family members are here. Cousin Sarah led a group into my living room, carrying boxes and bags. We're returning everything we took yesterday, she explained. The things Thea told us to secure during the meeting. I hadn't even noticed items missing in the chaos. They unpacked Luke's rare books, family photos, even his prized golf clubs. We were wrong, Sarah continued, tears in her eyes. So wrong. Can you ever forgive us? Before I could answer, Bethany's phone buzzed. Her eyes widened as she read the message. They're not taking the deal, she announced. Thea and Jameson are claiming everything was Luke's idea, that he set up the fraudulent schemes and they were just following his instructions. What? Ira jumped up. They're trying to blame Dad? It won't work, Bethany said firmly. We have dated documents proving the scheme started after Luke's death, plus Sandra's testimony and the recordings. They're desperate, I realized, trying to salvage their reputations by destroying Luke's. Well, they've lost their last ally, Uncle Robert declared from the doorway. We hadn't heard him arrive. The country club board just voted to revoke their memberships, unanimously. For Thea and Jameson, that would hurt worse than jail time. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Luke and me at our wedding, with a message. You'll regret this. Family secrets should stay secret. I showed it to Bethany, who immediately called the DA. Add witness intimidation to the charges. They still think they can scare me, I said, looking around at my support system. Kayla, Ira, Olive, Athena, Sandra, and the family members who'd finally seen the truth. They don't understand that I'm not alone anymore. Speaking of not being alone, Bethany said, checking her phone again, the DA wants to know if you'll speak at their arraignment tomorrow. Show the judge that the person they tried to declare incompetent is fully capable of testifying against them. I thought of Luke, of our home, of everything we'd built together. Yes, I said firmly. It's time they faced someone they can't intimidate or manipulate. They wanted your house, Kayla said, hugging me. Instead, they lost everything. Not everything, I corrected her, looking at our gathered family. They lost something far more valuable than money or property. They lost our trust, and they're never getting that back. The courtroom fell silent as I approached the podium. Thea and Jameson sat with their expensive lawyers, their designer outfits replaced by drab clothing that somehow made them look smaller, diminished. Mrs. Stout, the judge said kindly, please share your statement with the court. I unfolded my prepared notes but set them aside. Instead, I looked directly at my former in-laws. I thought about coming here with anger, I began, about listing every scheme, every lie, every betrayal. But that's not what Luke would want. Thea flinched at her brother's name. Jameson stared at his hands. Instead, I want to talk about legacy. Luke believed in building things that last. Homes, relationships, trust. While you were plotting to take my home, I was planning its future. I turned to address the judge. Your Honor, I'm converting my house into a women's shelter and resource center, a place where vulnerable people can find safety and support, just like I found support when I needed it most. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Kayla squeezed Athena's hand in the front row, both of them beaming. The money they stole from our family, I continued. Every penny they repay will go toward funding this shelter. Their greed will become someone else's sanctuary. Objection! Thea's lawyer stood. This is inflammatory. Overruled, the judge cut in. Continue, Mrs. Stout. Thea, Jameson. I addressed them directly. You thought I was a grieving widow you could easily destroy. You were wrong. Luke didn't just leave me a house. He left me the strength to defend it, and the wisdom to use it for something greater than myself. Bethany stood up next to me, handling the formal part. Your Honor, we've submitted the paperwork establishing the Luke Stout Memorial Foundation. All restitution payments will go directly to funding the shelter's operations. The judge nodded approvingly. Given the defendants' rejection of the plea deal and their subsequent attempts to defame their deceased brother, I'm inclined to impose the maximum sentence. Thea finally broke her silence. Genesis, please! We're family! So, family? I turned to her. Family doesn't plot to have someone committed. Family doesn't forge medical documents or steal trust funds. Family builds each other up. They don't tear each other down. The judge cleared his throat. Thea and Jameson, please rise for sentencing. They stood, trembling. The judge's voice was stern as he handed down their punishment. 7 years in prison, full restitution to all victims, and permanent bars from working in real estate or financial services. As they were led away, Ira approached me with Olive. Dad would be proud, he said softly, both of how you fought back and what you're doing with the house. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with cameras and microphones, but it was Sandra who spoke first, standing with other victims of Thea and Jameson's schemes. "We're all contributing to the shelter," she announced. "Every penny they repay us will help other people rebuild their lives." Uncle Robert stepped forward. "The family's establishing a scholarship fund, too, for women seeking legal or financial education. We want to prevent others from being victimized like we were." Back home, I found Athena directing volunteers who were helping convert the guest rooms into shelter spaces. Kayla was organizing donations of clothes and supplies that had poured in since the story broke. "Ms. Genesis," Athena called out, "come see what arrived." In Luke's study, now transformed into a counseling room, hung a new sign: the Luke Stout Memorial Foundation, turning houses into homes, survivors into warriors. "Perfect timing," Bethany said, walking in with a stack of papers. "The first 3 residents have been approved. They move in next week." I touched the sign gently, thinking of Luke. He'd always said our home had too much love for just 2 people. Now it would shelter dozens, giving them the same security and support he'd given me. "Genesis!" Kayla pointed out the window. A young woman stood hesitantly at our gate, clutching a small bag. I walked out to meet her. "Can I help you?" "I saw the news," she said quietly, "about what you're doing here. I need a safe place." "Then you found one," I said, opening the gate. "Welcome home." Behind us, the house seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Where Thea and Jameson had seen only profit, I saw purpose. Where they'd plotted destruction, I'd built hope. "Come on," I said to our first unofficial resident. "Let me show you around. This house has a way of healing broken things. Trust me, I know from experience." As we walked inside, I smiled at the irony. My in-laws had tried to take everything from me. Instead, they'd helped me find my true calling. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's using their weapons to build something beautiful.